times must I tell you? You must never put your life on the line for me.
Mother has always had a fascination for Lord Mortimer, but has never wanted to tell me why.
We are doing our utmost to find your mother as quickly as possible. Without your mother, hundreds of men of the cloth would have gone to the guillotine.
All I can tell you is I'm looking for my sister.
Do you believe your mother capable of torturing a child?
An agreement for cannons. Lord Mortimer assured me that you are to take over the project on behalf of your mother.
Johann Christoph von Wollner, Minister of Religious Affairs, and Jacques Peroux, French Revolutionary Tribunal Judge. You will find that Lord Mortimer is not what one would call conventional, Monsieur de Riche. Monsieur de Riche, I am arresting you for the murder of Elizabeth Adams.
At last we meet, Monsieur de Riche. Do you mind if I call you Louis?
Please do.
Thank you. I wish to apologize wholeheartedly, Louis. I made you cross the seas, and I wasn't even here to welcome you. When I asked you to join us here, it was, of course, in the hope that you would help us find your mother. But an act of horrific violence occurred during the night, and I do not know if this is linked to the disappearance of Sarah.
What are you getting at? What act of violence?
We found Elizabeth Adams' body in her room. She was brutally murdered, stabbed several times. I'll get straight to the point, Louis. According to the initial elements at my disposal, you were the last person to see her alive.
Yes, last night we, Do you suspect me?
I want you to tell me everything that happened last night and leave nothing out. Tell me, how did the evening begin?
Duchess Hillsborough and I were returning to our rooms when Elizabeth came up to us. She was in a state of panic and insisted that she needed to speak to me. She said she feared for her life. I took my leave of the Duchess and followed Elizabeth to her room.
Continue.
She insisted we have a drink, without which she refused to confide anything.
What exactly did she want to speak about?
About my mother. She had just found out that I was Sarah de Riche's son. Elizabeth wanted to tell me about the horrors my mother apparently inflicted on her.
Finding out that your own parents had always lied to you. Well, that must not have been an easy thing to hear. But do go on.
I refused to go on drinking with her. She already seemed drunk and her conversation became confused. So then she ordered me to get out. If only I'd stayed.
Don't blame yourself, Louis. How could you have known? But thank you for this new information. Louis, I shan't hide the fact that this tragedy puts me in a very delicate situation. I cannot risk upsetting the smooth operation of our next conference. But the case cannot remain unaddressed. I must reassure my guests, and justice will be done. And for that to happen, I must ask for your help.
Why is that?
You met Elizabeth. You spoke together, I believe. She trusted you. Listen, Louis. Find out who could have committed this murder. I refuse to believe that one of my guests is the murderer. I want to know who is responsible for this. And I trust you. You have my backing. You must stop at nothing. Can I count on you?
Of course. How would you like me to proceed?
Maybe you could start by going to the scene of the crime. Elizabeth was attacked in her room.
Do you have any suspects in mind, my lord?
I spent most of the night talking with Sir Gregory and His Eminence Piaggi. So I think you can remove them from the list of suspects. Monsieur Bonaparte and President Washington left the party after midnight, I believe. They were tired and went up to bed.
Can you tell me anything else about what happened?
Now, Louis, I wouldn't want to influence you. Get over there and form your own opinion.
Right. I'll get over there immediately.
Thank you, Louis. Now, once you've finished, come back and let me know your findings. I'll be waiting. And Louis, you've got permission to search through the guests' rooms. They've all been notified and they agree.
Which four-letter word could open this chest? Your Eminence, I imagine that you've heard the news about Miss Adams.
What a tragedy, my son. How could such a thing have happened?
That's exactly what I'm trying to find out. Did you notice anything out of the ordinary last night?
I saw the young French soldier, Bonaparte, I believe, hanging around near Miss Adams' room. But I would not want to get an innocent man into trouble, Louis. It's probably nothing.
Not to worry, Your Eminence. If he is innocent, then he has nothing to fear. Do you know why Monsieur Bonaparte was hanging around her room like that?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that the dashing young soldier had become infatuated with a fragile young woman who looked a bit lost. But I don't think he got a very warm welcome.
Bonaparte and Adams? But they didn't even know each other, did they?
I couldn't say, Louis. But if I were you, my son, I would talk to Monsieur Peru. You remember how violently he set upon Miss Adams.
Oh, don't worry. He's on the list of suspects. Dante's Purgatory. Why does your mind presume to flight when you're still like the imperfect grub, the worm before it's attained its final form? Charming. Which four-letter word could open this chest? Monsieur Johann van Volner.
Good day, Monsieur de Riche.
Mr. Volner, are you looking for anything in particular? Next to Elizabeth's room?
No, nothing special.
Has anyone told you that Elizabeth was killed last night?
Yes. Rumors spread quickly.
He looks very put out.
It's horrible. How did it happen?
I can say nothing to you, sir. You'd better follow your host's instructions and stay in your quarters.
I shall leave you now, sir. I will return to my room.
Clock stopped at 3:54. If it was smashed during the murder, then I've just established the time of the crime. hell's been going on here? I wonder if Elizabeth's death has anything at all to do with this pentagram. If a ritual went wrong and degenerated, Elizabeth would probably have been killed in the center of the pentagram, not 3 meters from here. That's strange. A pentagram? What the hell's been going on here? Many esoteric rituals are based on this shape. Could Elizabeth have been sacrificed during an occult ritual? Huh. The talisman that I gave back to Elizabeth. I can't exactly say it brought her good luck. A notebook written in Elizabeth's handwriting. It is written in a mix of several languages. Not too easy to work out. August 24th, 1792. Elizabeth, I am driven to despair and doubt. Piece of fabric, high quality at that. I'd say it's silk. Going by the texture and the gray hue, it must come from a dress, that kind that women of quality wear. Color doesn't correspond to Emily's black outfits, and Elizabeth doesn't have anything quite like this in her wardrobe. Let's take a closer look. It's a little dirty. It must come from the bottom of the dress where it touches the ground. I recognize that moire pattern. It's the same as the travel dress my mother was wearing when she left. But why the hell did she come into this room? Vials of laudanum. The label shows that this laudanum comes straight from America. I wonder if Washington's involved. Poor girl bled to death. Whoever left that footprint has boats for feet. That's at least a size 15. Where's a size like that here? Peru? Washington, maybe. Knocked over bottle of wine. Thing Elizabeth served me last night. Still just as disgusting. I don't know what's happened to this wine, but it's undrinkable. The blade is short and thin. Well sharpened, apparently. It's covered in blood. Still fresh. The lower part of the handle is unsullied by blood. The murderer gripped the weapon so tight that there's no blood where he held it. The handprint indicates a small and slender hand. The handprint on the handle is really small. I can't imagine a man with a hand that size. It must be from a woman's hand. There are numerous marks on the body. She must have fought like a lion. It couldn't have happened without a lot of noise. There are also a number of old scars. Scarring, ugh. Scarring isn't very regular, but they're mostly from old cuts. People who scar themselves in this way generally do so to relieve some kind of psychological suffering. By trying to master the pain, they establish their self-control. I count no fewer than 9 wounds on the thorax with a lot of blood. At first sight, I'd say that's what caused her death. It looks as though the wounds were inflicted from a precise angle, as if the murderer was standing behind Elizabeth. Some of these tattoos are veritable works of... What's that? The skin between her breasts is different. Bloody hell! This tattoo was drawn on a page of leather and stitched onto her skin. Probably during childhood. If the scars are anything to go by. It's the same kind of tattoo as on the rest of her body. It looks as though the wounds were inflicted from a precise angle, as if the murderer was standing behind Elizabeth. I see no sign of bruising on the skull. The only clue is a scar from a previous craniectomy. Poor Elizabeth, she must have been very young when she went through all that. That's torture. She also has old scars around the neck, maybe mutilations. What a strange smell. She bled from the nose. There are signs of bleeding, but I don't see any traces of bruising. There are signs of bleeding, but I don't see any traces of bruising. Blood, but no trace of blows on the legs. The direction of the blood streaks caused by the wounds to the thorax show that she was standing when she lost blood. This proves that she was standing when she was assassinated, possibly held by someone or something. More tattoos, similar to those on the rest of her body. No wounds, but blood on the right hand. Nothing on the left except that tattooed symbol. No marks or bruising around the wrists. Doesn't look like she was tied up or held by force. My dear Elizabeth, I'm writing to inform you of some unfortunate news. We won't be able to meet as planned on the first Sunday of May. I've been told that you're no better, and unfortunately, your brothers and I are absolutely snowed under by the work required to govern this new country. Please excuse us as soon as we can get free, even if it's just for a day. blood spatter indicates that the murder must have held Elizabeth upright during the attack. Even if Elizabeth wasn't very big, I doubt she wouldn't have put up a struggle. It takes tremendous strength to overpower someone like that. The clock stopped at 3:54. If it was smashed during the murder, then I've just established the time of the crime. Pistol? Fairly new, I'd say. And judging by the weight of it, fairly light. A tribute engraved on the barrel. To the liberators of France. There's a few dried traces of blood on the grip. Difficult to know for sure how they got there. It's extremely well maintained. The barrel is perfectly clean. It isn't loaded, and there's no traces of gunshot residue. I'd conclude that it hasn't been used recently. Right. I shall have to find its owner.
Has Sir finished with this room?
Do you know who could have made such a mess of this room?
Miss Adams, sir. We were given orders to leave the room as it was, so as not to rush her.
Did she have a fight with someone to get the room into this state?
Not that I know of, sir. Miss Adams would sometimes throw a tantrum, during which she would destroy anything that came to hand. Lord Mortimer told us not to enter the room.
Thanks for that information.
You are welcome, sir. Has Sir finished with this room?
I know enough now. Thank you.
Very well, sir. Sir may return whenever need be. I shall guard the door.
President George Washington.
Greetings, Louis.
Mr. President, you can guess why I'm here.
Of course.
Lord Mortimer has sent me to ask you a few questions about last night.
It's... How am I going to tell Elizabeth's father that she's dead?
I know, Mr. President. I shall endeavor to find out the truth about this tragedy. I must ask you to help me, though. Please.
Find the degenerate pig who did this, Louis.
Are you all right, Mr. President? Are you feeling all right?
Oh, don't worry. It's this rotten toothache. What do you expect? I'm no spring chicken now.
Tell me, Mr. President, had you spoken to Elizabeth since your arrival? You know her father. You thought she was dead.
No, I didn't. And I believe I'll be taking my remorse with me to my grave. I wanted to, but I didn't know where to begin.
You can't blame yourself. You couldn't have known that her days were numbered. Were you aware that Elizabeth took laudanum?
Yes,
She came to ask me for some. She had finished her reserve, I believe.
Did she tell you why she was so desperate to get some, Mr. President?
She said she had terrible migraines that wouldn't go away.
More likely for the voices she heard, not the migraines. Do you know if she had any enemies, Mr. President?
Not that I know of. I heard about her altercation with Mr. Perru, but that case was closed, if I'm not mistaken. But if in doubt, I wouldn't leave any door unopened. And I'd go and question your fellow countrymen.
Don't worry. Countryman or not, I'm not letting anybody slip through the cracks. Do you know why she came to the island?
To get help, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right?
Indeed. Sir Gregory suggested to her father that he introduce her to Lord Mortimer to see if he could help her. It would appear that she wasn't invited to the conference.
That doesn't surprise me. The poor girl was in no way concerned by our business, and she had no political clout.
So, I don't understand why Sir Gregory invited her during the conference of his good friend Lord Mortimer. He must have realized that he wouldn't have much time to grant her. Preparing a conference does not seem an easy task. On the evening of our arrival, Lord Mortimer didn't even welcome us, what with his being so busy and all.
Yes, you're right, Louis. I didn't think of that. It is indeed rather surprising. The easiest thing to do is simply ask him, you know.
Of course. Mr. President, we found a footprint at the scene of the crime.
Not a dress shoe, I hope. That's all I wear.
No, rest assured, it looks like the print of a big ankle boot. A large size, I'd say.
Perfect. That should help you, Louis. It's a clue.
It looks like a note between Emily and Washington about trade deals.
My dear George, I'd like to invite you to join me as planned at my place. I have a project to show you. It is time that the United States played a more important role on the world stage. I understand your reluctance of playing with fire.
Portrait of George Washington. Monseigneur, His Eminence Cardinal Piaggi. Huh, that's me. Duke Manuel Godoy. Duchess Emily Hillsborough. Tending children at the orphanage in Harlem. I find it a little hard to understand this painting choice. King George III in coronation robes. Nice touch for the room of an English duchess.
Dear E, I received your last letter. Unfortunately, the Crown informed the Golden Order that our mission should under no circumstances hamper Sir Gregory's plans. Decidedly, they have support from the highest level in Buckingham Palace. So here we both are, hands and feet tied, and little room to maneuver. Keep me abreast of events. Our mission is becoming more complicated. Yours, E.
The Lady's Waldegrave by Reynolds, painted upon the request of the Waldegrave family in an effort to find them a husband. Displayed like meat. It's disgusting.
What can I do for you, Louis?
I've come to see you about last night's tragedy. Did you hear anything about what happened to Elizabeth?
Yes, we all did. Rumors spread quickly, you know. How awful. I didn't know her well, but I hope at least the poor thing didn't suffer too much.
Death came quickly. You can be assured of that.
If such a senseless act can happen here, then none of us is truly safe anywhere. Lord Mortimer must be mortified that one of his guests could have committed such an act, don't you think?
He is indeed very upset about it. It's only natural after such a violent murder.
Violent? What do you mean?
Elizabeth was stabbed 9 times.
Oh my God, Louis. How awful. The murderer must have had a serious grudge against her to set upon her like that. It must have been a crime of passion. Do you know what happened exactly?
In fact, Lord Mortimer has asked me to look into this case, Emily.
Really? Are you Lord Mortimer's snoop now?
I'm doing it for Elizabeth, not to please Mortimer.
Good for you. Quite right, too. Have you found out anything?
Did you and Elizabeth get to know each other?
I must admit, Louis, I didn't take much interest in her. I feel a bit guilty about it, but I never actually spoke to her. She seemed burdened by her problems, and as she wasn't invited to the conference, I didn't really seek her out.
I'm now interviewing all the guests to establish the alibis for each person. Just so that I can cross you off the list of suspects, can you tell me what you were doing on the night of the murder?
Am I given to understand that I'm on the list of suspects?
Don't take it the wrong way, but I must consider every possibility.
Well, if you absolutely wanted to be sure of my activities that evening, you only had to join me, you know.
I know, Emily. Especially since I couldn't prevent the murder, even though I spent part of the evening with Elizabeth.
You're sure it's not too hard to bear for you?
The fact is, I don't have a choice. But I will find the murderer. I owe Elizabeth that, at least. I found a torn piece of dress in Miss Adams' room. Gray silk.
Where's it from?
That's what I'm trying to find out. The color doesn't match any of Elizabeth's dresses, but I might not have found all of her clothes yet.
Good Lord, Louis, do you realize what this means? If this piece of dress isn't from Elizabeth, then it's... I don't have any grey silk dresses, Louis. Neither does my sister, since we wear the same clothes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to check with you.
I'm so sorry, Louis.
Thank you.
Are you all right? You know, I'm sure there's a good reason why your mother was at the scene.
Thank you, Emily. We found the murder weapon.
What is it?
A dagger, quite slim.
Have you found its owner?
Not yet. Still searching as it happens. That said, since the blade penetrated the body several times, the murderer's hand will have been covered in blood.
You think that's a clue?
The handprint was a very slender hand, Emily. Probably that of a woman.
Do you realize what that means? There are only 3 of us on the island. Bearing in mind that neither my sister nor myself had any reason to set upon the young lady, that means...
I know, Emily. I know.
Keep up your courage, Louis. I'm sure there's an explanation. You're bound to shed some light on it all.
If what you say is true, Emily, I'm less and less enthusiastic about shedding any light on the subject. I won't keep you, Emily. Thank you for answering my questions.
See you, Louis.
A letter from William Pitt the Younger, addressed to Emily. He's the present Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Emily has indeed some powerful backers. Madam, thank you for consoling the Queen. The King's situation is worsening, but I wager he'll recover from this present fit. Next time you speak with Her Majesty the Queen, would you please be so kind as to ask her to look into my petition to raise taxes with the King? I will personally see to it that our nation will recover from this impasse. But King George... Two coils circle the lock. Two coils circle the lock. A letter from William Pitt the Elder addressed to Emily. He was the English Prime Minister. This letter dates from 15 years ago now. Madam, I shall never thank you enough for all your care and attention. I shall be indebted to you until my last breath. If you have any request of me, you only need ask. With regards to my son William, I shall never thank you enough for looking after him. You know the latter's preferences, and you will understand he needs you desperately. For that, and as agreed with Queen Charlotte, our friend Duke Hillsborough will carry out his task and meet with you within 6 months. From then on, you'll be free from want. Yours sincerely, William Pitt. A devil's thorn, to be used to uncover the best disguised traits.